Welcome, Bronco Nation. The long offseason is over, and we are just a few days away here from kickoff for Boise State versus Oregon State. This is my 3 keys to the game video. We're going to go through the series history between these two teams. We're going to talk about some top players for both teams, players for Boise State fans to keep an eye out for on the Broncos side, and also on the opposing side of the field, something that fans should be aware of as far as some players from Oregon State. We'll look at 3 keys to the game for Boise State, and then we'll give a quick summary here and a score prediction at the end. So stick around all the way to the end so you can hear my score prediction. It's going to be a great video overall. I want to hear your score predictions in the comments. Make sure you go down there, you comment while you're at it. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. Great Boise State content all year long. Great college football content, Mountain West content all season long. So make sure you like and subscribe. It's going to be a great year. Before we get into this, last plug, if you haven't already, go watch my Boise State 2022 preview series where I brought on former players and we went through and we looked at all of the position groups. There's 6 videos in that series, and then a 7th video where I give a overall schedule game-by-game breakdown of what I'm thinking is going to look like for the season and an overall record prediction for Boise State. So make sure you go watch that. That's the last plug. Let's get right into it then. So Boise State versus Oregon State, September 3rd, 8:30 p.m. Mountain Central Time on ESPN. Oregon State is favored by 3 points by Vegas, but ESPN is giving Boise State the slight nod with a 50.2% chance of winning. Also, interesting fact, Boise State currently is actually favored to win all of their games according to the ESPN FPI. And that has changed throughout the season, but last time I checked a few days ago, Boise State was still favored. So that's an interesting thing for Boise State fans. Maybe this could be a big season. We're going to find out this week. Of course, first week is always the hardest game to predict. We'll learn more about both of these teams after this game. But like I said, there's a lot of expectations here. Year 2, both of these teams really, a lot of expectations. 7-5 regular season finishes for both of these programs. Oregon State going to a bowl game, losing to Utah State, ending 7-6. So both these teams coming off of disappointing seasons with some highs as well that we'll talk about later in the video. But a lot of expectations for this year. We'll have to see which of these programs can end up on the upside here with a win right off the bat. All right, so series history between these two teams. Well, Boise State and Oregon State have played a lot of times, actually, compared to most non-conference foes. 4-5. They've met 9 times in the past. Oregon State owns the series by 1 game, 4-5. First ever win was in 1986 when Boise State was still an FCS program. Oregon State winning that one 3-34. Then they went on to win 3 more games in a row in the series. Boise State's first win in the series under Ryan Dinwiddie came in 2004. Big win, 53-34. That was the first ever win for Boise State in the series. And then Oregon State took a game in 2005, and then since then, there have been no regular season wins by Oregon State. Boise State has won 3 wins, back-to-back. A game was lost in the bowl game. We all remember the interim head coach change in 2013, end of the 2013 season when Chris Peterson left, Brian Harsin coming in 2014. Interim head coach. We went and played them in the Hawaii Bowl and ended up losing with our interim head coach, which is really not a surprise. But as far as regular season games go, normal team on the field, 3 straight wins by Boise State. Last win coming in 2016, 38-24 win at Oregon State. So Boise State already has experience winning at the Beavers. So this is going to be an interesting one. Can Boise State tie up the series? Can they get to 5-5? We'll talk about that here. Who has some key players to keep an eye out for, though? Going with Boise State first, and these are going to kind of be pretty simple, pretty honest. I mean, no surprises here. So number 1, Hank Bachmeier, quarterback. Your main player on any team is going to be your quarterback. Everything runs through them on the offense. He had a good junior season last year, 3,079 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he can definitely improve on that this year. He is a senior this season, but when you look at his overall playing time due to injuries or shortened COVID seasons, he's really only had total, last year would have been his sophomore year if you just talk about total games. So even though he was a junior last year, I'm really counting his junior season to be this year when you talk about the amount of playing time that he's actually had. He might be a 4-year player, but really when you look at what you can expect from him, he's coming into this season as junior, in my opinion, and the junior years is where you really see quarterbacks take a big step forward. So 3,000 yards passing last year, first time he eclipsed 3,000 yards passing in his career. I think that he can take a big step forward. Again, Ryan Dinwiddie and I talked about all of that in the quarterback passing game preview. Make sure you take a look at that. But he's going to be the biggest key for Boise State. However, Hank Bachmeier does, I think, because Tim Plow's offense, very, very heavy on the pass, or at least that's what we saw last year. However Hank Bachmeier does, that is going to impact Boise State's future this season and definitely going to impact this game. Second, though, even though it was a pass-heavy attack, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Helani, the main running back for Boise State, wasn't in most of the season. He was injured for the first half of the year, or coming off an injury the first half of the year. When he came back, Boise State looked like a very different team. So the second key player I have for Boise State is going to be George Helani. Only 569 yards rushing last year and a touchdown. But like I said, that was due to a lot of injuries. He didn't play most of the season. He looked good when he came back healthy. Boise State's a completely different team when Helani's in. He adds a completely different dimension to this offense. It provides Boise State a reliable running game to set up the passing game, which is really what Tim Plow wants. He tried to force it last season to his detriment. You all remember the second half of the UCF game. But when Tim Plow actually has the players for the offense that he wants to run, and which he does this season, I think it's going to be a much different affair going forward. Another reason to keep an eye out on Helani, though, is because Boise State running backs have traditionally had great success against Oregon State in the past, especially when Boise State's been able to go out and win those games. Of course, everyone remembers Ian Johnson's 5-touchdown performance in 2006, put Boise State really kind of on the national perspective there. They started keeping an eye on the Broncos. Of course, that was the season that they went out and won that 2007 Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. So 5-touchdown performance, 200-plus yards by Ian Johnson. Alexander Madison also put up 200-plus yards the last time Boise State played this team. Jeremy McNichols also put up 200-plus yards the last time Boise State played this team. And then Doug Martins also had a impressive outing the year that they played Oregon State. So this is a team that traditionally Boise State is able to perform well against when they have a good running back. They have a great one here in Helani. His freshman season was very memorable. His sophomore year and his junior year have been marred by injuries. So coming in here to his senior season for Boise State, he still has some eligibility. He could come back if he wants to. But coming into his senior season for Boise State, fully healthy, this is going to be an exciting year for George Helani. He's going to be a key player here for Boise State. Final key player of the game for Boise State here, we're going to look at defensive perspective. J.L. Skinner, the highlight reel of the defense last season. Of course, the memorable hit against Oklahoma State. But 92 tackles, 3 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumbled recoveries. This guy set the tone on defense. He really inspired and energized the whole team with his performances, in addition to just being a reliable threat out there. He's going to be the main guy in the safety position this season because his fellow safety from last season, a free safety from last season, now moving up to the nickel spot. So no, he's not going to have Tyreek Jones sitting back there with him, so he's going to kind of be that main factor there back in the secondary for Boise State. So this is going to be a key player. Boise State, I think, is going to be good on defense overall. They've got a ton of other names we could name. When you talk about one guy who's going to inspire the whole team, J.L. Skinner is going to be your guy. All right, let's look at Oklahoma at OSU's, played them last year. Let's look at Oregon State. So Boise State a chance to get some revenge against an OSU, even though it's not the same OSU from last season. Too many OSUs in football. So anyhow, OSU, Oregon State, let's look at their 3 top players of this game. We've got quarterback Chance Nolan Jr., 2,677 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Also a mobile threat. I wouldn't necessarily call him a traditional dual threat quarterback, but he is able to add something on the ground in addition to his passing abilities. 286 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns as well. So definitely a guy who can get out there and move and be a threat on the ground when he needs to be. Running back Fenwick and Lau. Now, this is a reason that Nolan is such an impact player for Oregon State, because they aren't returning their main running back BJ Baylor from last season, over 1,300 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. So the pressure is going to be on the quarterback position to step up to be the threat for this offense while they try to work some new faces in. Now, I will say, last season, they were in a similar spot. Oregon State was their 800-plus yard running back was leaving. I think B.J. Baylor only had like 160-something yards, under 200 yards rushing the season before, and then he exploded onto the scene. So I expect something similar. Oregon State's system seems to be set up for a back to have success in it. So I expect to see one of these guys step out and take the lead. So it's going to kind of be the key player is really going to be which one of these guys ends up taking over the reins of this offense through the running game. Both of them are listed as or right now, so they're both listed as starters, as interchangeable starters right now on the Oregon State depth chart. They combined last season together for over 1,000 yards rushing, only 4 touchdowns, but over 1,000 yards rushing between them. So we'll have to see which of them steps up and maybe claims that sole 1,000 yards this season. And then defensively, it's going to be Omar Spite, the linebacker, and I may not have said that name correctly. I apologize if I messed up. But Omar, the linebacker, 87 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumble recoveries. He's going to be really the heart and soul of the defense. They're sitting at the linebacker core as one of their leading tacklers from last season. Really adds a veteran presence for them on defense. And Boise State, if they want us to help establish the running game with Helani, he's going to be a factor against that. All All right, let's talk about 3 keys to the game here. So first key is going to be keep up the tempo. Boise State's going to want to go out here and hit Oregon State hard. Boise State, for a couple of reasons here. First off, really kind of lethargy in the game as Boise State started to slow down throughout the game. They really started to take off the steam, take a step off the gas pedal, and that's when you see it. So Boise State, who had leads a lot of times in the first half, let's rememberably that UCF game, started to then subside in the second half and let the other team come back. Or even against Nevada, where the second half is where Nevada was able to take over the reins there and win that game. So Boise State, if they want to stay in the game, if they want to be dominant in these games, they need to stay up-tempo and keep the pedal to the metal from the beginning to the end. Tim Plow, when he came in, he said he doesn't stop until the scoreboard reads 50+. I don't know if we saw that this season. I'm really hoping that we see that this year, that it's more than just words. I think this is what Boise State has to do if they want to go out here and win, but they also want to be able to capture that national attention, right? Boise State, it's not just about, being another 10-2 team or something like that kind of limps into a Mako Bowl, or not the Mako Bowl anymore, but the secondary bowl, the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. So Boise State doesn't want to be that team. Boise State wants to be the team in the spotlight. They want to be the ones bringing in the national attention, bringing in the hype, being talked about for Power 5 movements up into the Power 5, being talked about for those New Year's Six Bowls. To do that, Boise State has to make highlights. Boise State has to win in a dominant fashion. They need to keep the tempo up the entire game. Second is going to be lean on the tight ends. The wide receiver core for Boise State was decimated. I've talked about that in my wide receiver tight end preview with Derek Schumann and Dryzen James. But the wide receiver core was decimated by Boise State due to graduation. A lot of seniors and fifth-year seniors for Boise State moving on up there. Of course, namely on that, the big one, Khalil Shakir. But you also had Octavius Evans and C.T. Thomas, both those gone. So 3 out of 4 of Boise State's top receivers are gone. Of course, you've got a really good wide receiver coming back in Stephon Cobbs, who should be able to fill the role nicely. And you've got some veteran guys who aren't necessarily super experienced, but they've been around for a while there, and Cutter, and of course Bowens as well, Billy Bowens. And you've got some real fresh faces coming up, like Latrell Caples. And then you also got some other great guys coming up as well, like Austin Bolt. And a whole list of players who haven't even seen the field yet for Boise State that I talked about in depth in that wide receiver tight end preview, who could potentially explode onto the scene for Boise State and be real threats there on offense. However, right now it's all unknowns. You got one guy really, Stephon Cobbs, who's your kind of playmaker. Even he, though, didn't take on a main role last season. So who are your guys? Who are your veterans? Who are your guys who are reliable? It's your tight ends. You've got 3 fantastic tight ends here in Raftel, Hopper, and Riley Smith. So Boise State really needs to lean on these guys. Hopper was one of the highlight reels of last season, had 2 deep touchdown receptions for Boise State. One of the most impressive deep touchdown receptions for Boise State last year against Colorado State. So Hopper, he's got the hands, he's got the height, he's 6'3". He's a threat out there in the receiving game. Of course, Riley Smith had a great 2020 season, over 100 yards receiving before kind of taking a step back last year, but he's also a very athletic guy, former quarterback. And then Kurt Raftel was actually second receiving for tight ends. He also had a touchdown versus San Diego State. So you've got some real reliable threats here in the passing game that the tight ends can be a role in. And of course, Boise State, you look at those offenses of the past, the tight ends were always huge parts of that. They really were. I mean, Boise State was an offense that would use all the players in the passing game, from their fullbacks all the way up through their wide receivers, but especially the tight ends. And so I think that is the second key here for Boise State. It's going to be able to lean on that experienced core, at least until the wide receivers kind of figure some things out here, kind of figure out who's going to be those next couple of go-tos outside of maybe Stephon Cobbs. The tight ends are going to be your reliable threats in the passing game. The last one here is bring out the Razzle dazzle. At Boise State, it's not just about going out and winning like I've talked about already. It's not about just getting that W. It's about how you get that W. Of course, getting the win is most important. So don't sacrifice good play calling for some gimmicky offense. However, the trick plays, that's part of who Boise State is. It's part of what brings Boise State to the national attention. When Boise State starts throwing those trick plays out there, people start remembering who Boise State is. They start remembering those great teams, those teams from, of course, the 2006 season, the 2007 Fiesta Bowl, those 2009, 2010 teams that went and played TCU. They remember Boise State's past, and they bring it forward into the future, and then they start, and of course, when you talk about pollsters, and it's all human bias now, and there's no BCS system, it's a lot about emotions and how you feel, and if you can make someone feel really good about your team and maybe start to mix in a little bit of memory to who you were in the past, a little bit of remembering the good times and bringing those forward to the future, you're going to have a better chance of rising in the polls, both, of course, in the AP, which don't really matter, but especially in the CFP. So Boise State, they don't want to just go out and win these games plodding along. They want to go out and win them explosively. They want to be dynamic, and they want to get on the top 10. They want to get on ESPN. They want to be included in the highlights. They want to become a national brand, or they are a national brand, but they want to continue to expound upon that national brand and be part of that national discussion. So the Razzle Dazzle is going to be important. I also think it's going to make up for potentially some weaknesses here in that wide receiver room. You start throwing out some trick plays, it really puts the defense on, gives them another thing that they have to keep an eye out for. I think it could open up some opportunities for Boise State. Also, there's the fact that I don't think Oregon State will be expecting it, because Tim Plow really didn't run any trick plays. I'm not going to say he didn't run any. I do believe he ran a couple of gimmicky type of plays, but I really don't think he ran many overall. So it really hasn't been part of his offense. So if he comes out with a couple, it will really put Oregon State on their back foot. This was really more for the fans and for the national attention overall, but I think both of those are equally important. You need to inspire not just confidence, but you need to inspire passion in your fan base to make them want to come out and to support the team, and to make them want to make Boise State a national brand, to be able to get all the money that you need for Jeremy Dickey's massive expansion plan, to be able to bring in the high-level recruits in the age of NIL, to bring in NIL deals. You need to be able to excite the fan base and entertain the fan base, not just go out and put W's up. Of course, at the end of the day, W's are most important. But if you can get a W in an exciting way versus kind of plodding along, go for the exciting way. So that's going to be my 3 keys here. Keep up the tempo, lean on the tight ends, and bring out the Razzle Dazzle. Summarizing all here before we give our score prediction. Looking at Oregon State, this is a team that went 7-6 last year. Losses to Purdue, Cal, and then Utah State, of course, in the bowl game. A team that Boise State crushed in the regular season last year. They also had win against Utah. They had a win against USC, who wasn't that great last year, but that was kind of a big win early on in the season for them. And they didn't have any losses at home. So this is a team, unlike Boise State, who was not able to protect the blue last year. This is a team that's coming. This blew last year. This is a team that's coming off of an undefeated record at home. It's something they definitely want to protect. They're definitely, both teams obviously motivated to go out and win this game, but a home game for Oregon State. They have that undefeated stretch at home to come off of. They're definitely going to be hyped. The crowd's going to be in it. It's sold out. I believe it's not at full capacity because they're doing some repairs, or not repairs, but some expansion on the stadium. But regardless, it's a sold out crowd, so it's going to be loud. And of course, like I said, coming off of undefeated record at home, that's going to be hard to deal with. So they have that advantage going for them. It's also a team that allowed 143.8 yards per game on the ground. That's good for 52nd nationally. And then 243.5 yards per game, which was good for 92nd nationally. So this is not a necessarily high caliber defense. The defense is going to be better. They return a ton of starters on the defense, so they're definitely going to have a step up. But like I said, there's some opportunities there, especially in the passing game. So Boise State, that's not necessarily where their super strength is, because of course those wide receiver losses. But if Hank Bachmeier can be the senior quarterback that he is and fulfill the expectations that fans have had for him that he hasn't really necessarily been able to step up to yet, combined with a good balanced running attack, there's going to be some opportunities for Boise State here on offense. But the defense is definitely going to be a strength of this team, because when you look at offensively for Oregon State, they're in the same spot where Boise State is. 3 of their top 4 wide receivers gone, and they aren't returning their top running back. So they're really going to be struggling here on offense to find out who their playmakers are. Like I said, a lot of questions on offense. They have some good answers on defense, but a lot of questions on offense. Boise State matches them on the wide receiver issue, but they have the added benefit of returning a stable running back. Again, not a guy who had a lot of yards last year, but that was because of injury. So he's going to be hungry. He's going to be rested. He's going to be ready to come in here and attack. So while Boise State is dealing with the same issues on offense as far as the wide receiver room goes, their running game is going to be far more reliable. And I also think that Boise State's defense overall is just going to be better. Boise State's defense was incredibly strong last season. It got much stronger, especially in the secondary as the year went on. They only lost really 2 main players on the defense there. Of course, losing Riley Wimpy, and then also losing Kaniho, the older. So Boise State is going to be having to replace those couple of guys, but you've got Tyreek Jones coming in to fill where Kaniho was, and they've got some good backups last year that are coming in to replace the linebacker position. So this is a Boise State team that is revamping, that is coming back with a lot of veterans across the board, really didn't lose anybody, returns their entire offensive line, who should be improved. When you talk about who's coming back the season overall last year, 7-5, 7-5. But when you look at the 7-5 Boise State had, that 7-5 was more impressive than the 7-5 Oregon State had. You had a game against Oklahoma State, which should have been won if not for the refs. You had a game against Air Force that was nail thin, I mean razor tight there, and really also had some issues with the referees. You had a fair loss against San Diego State, and you had a loss against Nevada, which was, of course, unfortunate. But Boise State had opportunities in that game. So you look at these 7-5, this was really a Boise State team that was a couple referee decisions, a one less interception away from really coming off of at least a 9-3 season overall, and not just sitting here looking at a 7-5. So this was a Boise State team that was really close to that 7-5, whereas the Oregon State team wasn't quite as close to coming off of a better season than the one they had. I mean, you look at the losses that they had, pretty bad loss to Purdue, 9-point loss there, close loss to Washington State, pretty big loss to California, and a decent loss here, one possession loss to Oregon. So this is a team that, when you look at their schedule, I think Boise State was the much better 7-5 team than Oregon State was. They return a lot more defensive players, or return a much stronger defense than Oregon State. They have a running back coming back for Boise State versus Oregon State's having to find someone to replace. They're equal in the wide receiver room. I think this is going to be a battle of defenses overall. I think Boise State's going to have the edge in this one. For my score prediction, I'm putting Boise State 27, Oregon State 17. So it's Boise State 27, Oregon State 17. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring affair, but I just think that Boise State's hungry. They're ready to prove some stuff here in Andy Avalos' second year at the helm. They are wanting to show that last year was not reflective of who this Boise State team is. And when you look at who these teams are returning and what they did last year, I think that the ball is in Boise State's court as far as the one who should be favored in this matchup. Thanks so much for watching. I want to hear your score predictions. I want to hear where I got it wrong. I want to hear what you thought about the video overall. So let me know in the comments. Thanks again for being here. I cannot wait for this game. I am so excited. It's been a long offseason. It's been a fun offseason with all the videos I've been able to do. So make sure you go check those out before the game starts. But regardless, this is going to be a fun one for Boise State. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go big!